what we're going to talk about is a faculty learning group that we ran for a year long at the University of Wyoming. And this was initiated by myself, Michelle Jarman, and my colleague Kristy Boggs, who heads our distance education group. And we came from two different schools of thought that are very much aligned in our thinking. So we were thinking, Kristy was really coming from an inclusive pedagogy model and active learning, adult learning. And I was coming from disability studies, but we were both very committed to this idea of access and universal design. So what we wanted to do was bring together faculty really who were handpicked for their commitment to inclusivity. And so we invited 10 faculty members, plus administrators, Sammy and Kristina from the libraries. We had several people involved from our UDSS group. And we came together as a learning community for a year-long program. And the importance to me, the difference between, we certainly focused on UDL, but I wanted to underscore sort of the philosophical framework that we used. And so if everyone will, you can move to the next slide. Is that working? It's working. Are you guys seeing that now?
Yeah, we can see it now. Great job.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you, Kristina and Sammy. So shall I walk through the overview and then we'll go back and do a polling? Okay, so what I wanted to focus on here as the philosophical background, we actually used Jay Dolmage's Academic Ableism, which many of you may be familiar with, as sort of a grounding text. And coming from disability studies, I really wanted to talk to faculty as much about universal design for learning as about content and really thinking philosophically about access. The importance to this for me is really about thinking about disability as diversity, bringing it into the content so that even as we're talking about UDL, we don't use the technology to allow people to think that we've now handled everything, but really kind of keep the needs of students with disabilities in the forefront so that UDL is thought of as a place to imagine and continue our commitment to access and continuing to develop that process. So that was very important. So just thinking about what our goals were really to provide a background, to develop skills, create opportunities for people to apply this in a practical way, and then to develop research. So from the very beginning, we had a subgroup that was involved in research, and Valerie and Kristina and Sammy have all been involved in that. So if you just, So our next slide, which we're moving to, has just our schedule and overview. So in the fall, we were more of a reading group, and we were looking at UDL modules. Now, these modules, I have to credit Dr. Eric Moore. It was wonderful to meet him at the beginning of this, and he became an incredible resource for us, sharing the online Canvas modules with us, and then coming to do a UDL boot camp with us over our winter break. So we were both studying UDL and getting versed in a background of academic ableism. In the winter, we did the boot camp, redesigned our syllabi, and in the spring, we did implementation, and then had a lot of technical support. And we continued our monthly meetings. This is also where we did our focus group, which we'll talk about at the beginning of that semester and then at the end. So I'll turn it back over. Do you guys want to take time to do a few polls? Yeah. What do you think?
Let's just, yeah.
We'll okay. We're going to go back to our original polls and ask you guys to participate. I'll let Kristina walk you through those.
So if you go to menti.com and type in that code, you can participate in our polling. So we'll give you just a second to do that. And then our first question is, we're wondering if you have a large UDL community on your campus. And if you don't know, that's perfectly all right. So we'll give about 30 seconds just to watch the polling come in. Okay. All right, so you can still answer the questions, but we got to move on. So the next question is, how engaged with UDL are faculty on your campus? So not at all, a little, a lot, or don't know. Great, and we'll post the results of these polls in our Google Drive folder after the presentation. And then just briefly, you can type in an answer. How would you describe faculty awareness or maybe non-awareness of UDL on your campus? So we'll give you about a minute for this one, since you need to type something. Superficial. Interesting answers. All right, we'll take about 15 more seconds to send in your answer. Sweden. So cool. Growing, that's great. All right, so we're going to go back to the presentation and we're going to keep going.
So a number of us in the pilot group implemented UDL this past spring in our, across our courses. And I'm just going to share my personal experience in implementing UDL in one of my graduate social work courses. And these three areas were the areas that I focused on, three main goals per se, as I was presenting or preparing rather for the course, preparing the syllabus, looking at the content, looking at possible assignments, and also not totally deciding on the assignments as I eventually co-created those assignments and products in the class. So, so these three goals I had were to remove barriers, and so I gravitated more towards talking about minimizing barriers, as the removal of barriers is pertinent to each particular learner as to what that looks like. And so I looked at minimizing these barriers in an effort to remove them all, if at all possible, looking at creating a more flexible learning environment and maximizing access. And so in minimizing barriers, I focused more on goal attainment, focusing more, as social work, we are competency-based. And so I focused more on the end goal as to how can students demonstrate competency, and wasn't as focused as on the means to get there, but what the product could indeed look like. And so mastery could be demonstrated by students in different ways. And so this lent itself to offering more of a flexible learning environment where a number of different choices were offered. Students were able to be more creative, they were more relaxed, they were able to embrace and showcase their strengths. And so thinking about assignments in more alternative ways were areas that I focused on. Students had, for example, we had to upload threaded discussions, and so it did not necessarily had to be written, but they could also insert whatever they thought was meaningful in a way to demonstrate mastery in those areas. So for example, they would upload videos and other graphical representations and other forms of multimedia representations as they embarked on presenting diverse mediums. In looking at maximizing access, it's all about creating that culture, that cultural environment of inclusivity. And so this, to me, spoke not only to pedagogy, but it spoke to creating that sense of emotional connection with the content and thinking about language and inclusive language as well, as we try to build not just focusing on space, but on other aspects of what access looks for particular students. Okay.
I'm going to speak briefly, this is Michelle again, about my class, which is an upper level undergraduate research class. For several years, I've had an access project. So it's a project-based learning where they have hypothetical events that they have to plan and really plan for specific kinds of access. This can range anywhere from their grandparents' anniversary party to something more tangible. And this year, I've often had one group of those students work specifically on a symposium that I've been involved in co-chairing, which is a symposium on social justice. And we've used students to support the access that we offer in that symposium. So my students this last year actually decided they would produce a new video, a training video, caption that video, and then it had a lasting impact. And as well, they volunteered at the symposium to support all of the other access kinds of things that we were doing, captioning, audio listening devices, just making sure that some people needed PA assistance, that kind of thing. So it was exciting because students were starting to take it on and change the assignment even and get creative with it. The video piece was what they decided. They presented that to, or suggested that to me, that would be their final project, which I was delighted with, rather than a presentation back to class, or they used that video to come back to class. So one of the things in my classes is I really try to maximize the way that students can both learn and teach each other about access. As you can imagine, because it's disability studies, I have a lot of students who will tend to speak openly over the span of the semester about specific access issues. And we try to, as people are willing to speak about those, really turn those into a community commitment. In addition to the note-taking we might do and how we run the class, how we move in the space. So it's become really quite wonderful that students kind of walk away with a deeper sense of learning from each other. So I'll just leave it there.
All right, so this is Kristina, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the library's role and the support that we gave the task force. Initially, Sammy was invited to join the task force, and then I joined a little bit later. But throughout the process, we provided 4 really big areas of support for this project. The first being technology. So we really helped facilitate access to and training on certain technologies that helped faculty integrate UDL into their classes. We also almost always met in the library. It's a pretty central place here on the University of Wyoming campus and tends to be a meeting hub. We also helped with resources. So we helped task force faculty find library resources that they needed and open educational resources for their classes that were relatively UDL friendly or could be adapted to be UDL friendly. And then we've also, as Michelle mentioned, played a role in the research. So, whoops, where'd that go? Sorry. Though we're not doing very good at our technology today. But we helped in running the focus groups and training on various technologies.
So this also really influenced the work that we do as librarians. I remember I was sitting in the first task force meeting, hearing about UDL and talking about how it can be incorporated. And I had this light bulb of why are we not doing this in the library as well? We teach instruction as well. And so it really started making myself and other colleagues within the library start thinking about how our instruction is accessible and incorporating UDL specifically. So we started just adapting. We took little steps, incorporating one thing at a time and redesigning how we teach information literacy. And then we started implementing that into the classroom in our one-shot sessions and then in the sessions that we do online with students. And now we are working to really reshape everything that we're doing with information literacy instruction within our department and within the profession as a whole. We've been publishing and presenting about UDL specific to librarianship. So this task force really helped us inform what we're doing as librarians as well.
So a number of questions drove our research aspect of this implementation and engagement and interaction. And so we have those questions on the screen. We have some preliminary findings, and those preliminary findings answer primarily questions: how does faculty understanding of inclusive pedagogy and UDL inform their approach in the classroom? And the other question, how does UDL inclusive pedagogy instruction enhance participants' understanding of unique students' needs as well as teaching practice? And so the other questions, we are continuing embarking on our research aspect, and we'll continue to explore those and seek answers to those particular questions. And so we just wanted to share with you a few of the salient themes that have emerged. We had a number of themes that popped up in the transcripts. And so as we looked at and tried, we did first coding, did a second round of coding, and we had multiple themes. Among those themes, and then we collapsed themes, so I'll just give you a rundown of some of the overarching initial themes we had. We had initial inclusive pedagogy, community, course design, engagement, flexibility, intentional design and barriers, library, among others. And so as we went through and we're doing additional rounds of coding, these four prominent ones, as we collapsed, are on your screen. So we have pedagogy, we have community, support and tools, and student inclusion. So regarding the pedagogy, as you can see, persons were talking more about creating this classroom, this flexible and inclusive classroom culture, and were more intentional as they prepare for their classes, and more also intentional in the moment in the class as well. Talking about the community, when we got together as a community, that we still have that sense of belonging as we work through. And so the others are there. In the interest of time, we'll jump to the last slide, or the follow-up slide, so we can address all of those.
So we are endeavoring to continue this process. A couple of our faculty members have already implemented UDL training into their preparation of their graduate teaching assistants, and that's been amazing. The acronym you see on your screen is LEARN. It's our Learning Resource Network, and they're training all their GAs with UDL. We're also trying to use our successor, and we're going to, as we polish and write our research and present even more, argue to administration that we would love to have more support for UDL on campus. I spoke to Eric about this when he was here, that we would love an expert in-house, of course, as many of us would. And then obviously completing the research. We're also really trying to figure out how we build on the commitment that we have in this faculty learning group to have them be ambassadors to scale or grow the commitment to UDL on campus. So with that presentation, we'd welcome any comments or questions from the group.
Yes, and you can also email us your comments or questions too. One question, I'd love to know what your message looks like to administrators.
So that's interesting. Actually, one great thing about this project is we had financial support from our distance education office. So I was given a fellowship. So I had a bit of a teaching leave, and then our faculty were given stipends. So we have a bit of visibility, and I was invited, to represent our group at a recent land-grant university conference. So I was talking to our student affairs, a head of student affairs. So we're trying to educate them about how important this is, give them information about our the success with faculty, how committed faculty are. So we're really still trying to build that and educate. But yes, I'm kind of hitting this point over and over that having an expert on campus to pair with, all of the, and build upon the commitment of faculty, because we do have a lot of faculty commitment. And if we can back that up. So we're working on it. We don't, it's a process, but I feel like people are open and engaged.
Yeah. So it looks like we have quite a few questions coming in. If you guys, we'll make a copy of the chat and we'll try and get in touch with you to answer your questions. But any other questions, if you wouldn't mind shooting us a quick email, that would be great, because we'd really like to answer your questions, but we have 15 seconds. So
do you guys want to talk about OER a little bit?
Yeah.
There's also the water cooler for continuing conversations. If you'd like to shift over there, because this room will close pretty briefly here.
Yeah, we're at our time right now, so
Okay.
we'll try and make it over there. But otherwise, we do welcome emails. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for bearing with us.
Thank you.